I never imagined falling in love with a struggling college girl on a blind date with my daughter. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The air was thick with anticipation as I walked into the crowded cafe, all buzzing with laughter and clinking cups. My heart raced, not from excitement, but from a deep-seated anxiety that twisted in my gut. What was I doing here? Then I saw her. Jessica. She sat in the corner, tapping her foot nervously, glancing at her phone as if it held the answers to her problems. Her brown hair fell in messy waves around her face, a stark contrast to the pristine cream of her sweater. She looked like she'd just rolled out of bed, yet there was something enchanting about her, an otherworldly allure that made my breath hitch. And then there was my daughter, Mia, in her cute little dress, chatting animatedly with her friend at the table next to Jessica. Mia's laughter rang out, beautiful and bright, as if it could light up the entire room. But amidst that warmth, I felt an icy chill creeping in. I had agreed to this blind date, a so-called great idea from my loving but naive daughter. But as I looked at Jessica again, the weight of her gaze pinned me in place. I could see the worry lines etched on her forehead, the slight tremble in her hands as she fiddled with a paper napkin, tearing it into tiny pieces. What was she hiding? As I settled down across from her, our eyes locked momentarily. It was electric. I felt something shift. But why did it feel so wrong? She was a college student probably half my age, and here I was, a man trying to make sense of my own life after a messy divorce. What do you think? Mia's voice broke through the fog. She was looking at me expectantly, her hopeful smile a burning beacon. I forced a grin, but inside, my heart was pounding with the weight of the unknown. I could feel the cafe's vibrations, the steam from the coffee machine, the muffled conversations that swirled around like whispers of fate. I wanted to reach out to Jessica, to connect with her beneath the surface of our awkward introductions. But there was a looming question that shadowed us both. Suddenly, the door swung open, and chilled air rushed in. A stranger entered, dark and mysterious, eyes scanning the room like a hawk. Jessica flinched at the sight, panic flashing across her face for just a moment before she masked it with a neutral expression. What was happening? Who was this person, and why did it seem like he was looking for her? My heart pounded fiercely against my ribs, desperation rising like bile in my throat. I could read the fear in Jessica's eyes, the kind of fear that chilled me to the bone. Just then, the world around us faded. I could sense all eyes on us, whispers underscoring the tension. I had no clue what I had walked into, but I knew instantly, deep in my gut, I was caught in a storm. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash the like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. My gaze flickered between Jessica and the stranger, a palpable tension thickening the air. I wanted to reach out to her, to ask if she was all right, but a potent cocktail of confusion and hesitation held me back. Jessica, are you okay? I finally broke the silence, forcing the words out as the stranger stepped further inside, shaking off droplets of rain that clung to his dark jacket. She hesitated, and for a fleeting moment, I thought she might open up, might share the fear that coursed through her veins like poison. Yeah, I'm fine, she replied, but her voice was thin, cracking under the weight of unspoken terror. I wasn't convinced. My intuition screamed that something terrible loomed beneath the surface. The stranger moved closer, his eyes boring into Jessica like a predator fixating on its prey. Mia, oblivious to the growing anxiety, continued chatting with her friend, occasional glances shooting between us as if sensing an unspeakable shift. I forced myself to focus, to steer the conversation away from the storm brewing just outside Jessica's bubble of safety. So, Jessica, what's your major? I asked, attempting to pull her back into the mundane chatter of college life. Her eyes darted between the table and the man who lingered near the entrance, still fixated on her. It's literature, she replied, but her voice was barely above a whisper. I could sense she was the farthest thing from present, her mind racing as she worried about the person who had just entered our lives without warning. An awkward silence stretched between us, filled with the nervous energy of the cafe. I fidgeted with the sugar packets, biting the inside of my cheek to suppress the urge to stand up, confront the mystery, and offer Jessica the sanctuary she desperately needed. But my responsibilities loomed larger, and I couldn't leave Mia unattended. She deserved to have this moment, even if I was about to take on a battle far beyond the scope of our straightforward coffee date. Then, without any warning, the stranger stepped forward, closing the distance with an unsettling swagger that made my skin crawl. "Jess," he called softly, an eerie possessiveness lacing his tone. "It's time to go." I felt the world tilt. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice firmer than I anticipated as I interposed myself between Jessica and this looming figure who clearly had no interest in respect. A flicker of surprise crossed his face, then a smirk settled. "Just an old friend." But his eyes were anything but friendly. Jessica's hand shot out to grab mine, her grip shaking yet resolute. There was something about this gesture, a tiny assurance I didn't know I needed, that sent warmth coursing through me amid the freezing chill of fear. Her touch anchored me, the connection grounding us both against the storm. Before I could respond, she breathed, "No. I'm not going anywhere with you." There was a flicker of defiance in her eyes, and despite the chaos unraveling around us, I felt a swell of protective instinct rise within me. But the stranger leaned in closer, a cold wind of intimidation. "And if you don't, it'll be worse for you. You know that." His tone dripped with malice that sent a shiver racing up my spine. At that moment, I felt my heart slam against the walls of my chest. Outside of this cafe, outside of our little bubble carved from laughter, there existed a raw, terrible world that had crept its way into our lives without notice. Mia turned, her eyes wide with concern. "Dad?" I couldn't let fear crush this moment, this fragile space where a connection was forming with Jessica. I took a deep breath, anchored myself against the tremors of uncertainty swirling inside. "You need to leave her alone," I said, the words tumbling out more bravely than I felt. But inside, I sensed that I was standing at a precipice, unsure whether to leap or retreat. The stranger's gaze darkened as he shifted his focus to me. "And who are you to tell me what to do?" His voice dripped with contempt. "Someone who won't stand by while you're threatening an innocent person," I shot back, saying the words for Jessica, for Mia, and for myself. Just then, as the tension peaked, something shifted in the atmosphere. A server nearby noticed the growing confrontation, and on instinct, I half-turned. I caught a glimpse of recognition reflected in the server's eyes, a gentle nod of solidarity. But the moment didn't last long. Jessica's fingers tightened around mine, and she whispered, "Please, don't. Just walk away." Her voice trembled with urgency, and with it, an unexpected sense of kindness erupted within me. "I can't let him hurt you," I murmured, locking eyes with her. But before I could take another step, a startling shout echoed through the cafe, jolting us all from this standoff. "Jessica, get away from him!" The cry came from a familiar face, one I recognized from Jessica's earlier tight-lipped expressions, the concerned presence that had seemingly been holding back. The stranger turned, his demeanor shifting, and in that heartbeat, I saw the resentment transform into survival. There was more to this story than I could ever imagine, and the unraveling truth had just begun to surface. Trapped in this cacophony of emotions, the line between right and wrong blurred as chaos brewed. What unspoken past had entwined Jessica and this stranger, and in what dark ways would it come back to haunt us? The sharp intake of breath from Jessica sent a tremor of fear racing through my veins. I turned my head slightly, seeking to comprehend the face behind the shout. There stood Rachel, fierce and resolute, clutching her phone as if it were a weapon, eyes blazing with protectiveness. She stormed across the cafe, her stride unwavering, and in her presence, I felt a rush of admiration. "Do you even realize what you're doing?" Rachel snapped at the stranger, venom dripping from her words. "You can't just barge in here and intimidate people like this." The stranger's smirk faltered for only a moment before his bravado surged back, but I sensed a calculated anger building within him. His gaze flicked over Rachel, sizing her up, yet I could tell he was potentially underestimating her determination, mistaking her defiance for mere recklessness. Jessica and I remained in our bubble, each heart thumping in the rhythm of uncertainty. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered to Rachel, her voice strained and edged with an emotion that was raw and desperate. "Would you rather I let him frighten you alone?" Rachel fired back, not bothering to hide her disdain for the man before us. The energy in the cafe shifted. Patrons had begun to take notice, some eyeing the scene with morbid curiosity, others whispering like startled birds. Enough, the stranger spat, taking a calculated step toward Rachel, his posture a mix of intimidation and irritation. "You don't know what you're meddling in. This is none of your business. Running away, are we?" Rachel taunted, her confidence unwavering. "Maybe if you actually cared about her well-being, you'd leave." This confrontation ignited a flicker of hope within me. Rachel's entrance had offered a brief respite to our spiraling chaos. But the flickering candle of courage dimmed when I saw the old fear creeping back into Jessica's eyes. She had already been swept far enough into a storm, and now this violent confrontation was just another tide threatening to drag her under. I squeezed her hand, desperate to ground her, to show her that she wasn't alone, that even drowning in anxiety and fear could be met with bravery. But the words I searched for slipped through my mind like sand. "Let's get out of here." I spoke gently to Jessica, the words barely above a whisper, but I could see the storm of uncertainty swirling in her mind. Rachel wouldn't leave without her, not now, not when the stakes had suddenly risen to an incomprehensible level. "No." Jessica's voice was sharper, tinged with desperation as she pulled me closer. "I can't leave now. I need to finish this." "Finish what, Jess?" Rachel interjected, frowning as her eyes danced between us. Jessica uncoiled a breath that felt more like surrender than resilience. "You don't understand." Her voice cracked, betrayal evident. "He's not just a stranger." Before Jessica could finish, the stranger interrupted, his voice icy and mocking. "You think you're so brave, Jess? Did you really think you could escape me forever?" The implication sank into my stomach, a heavy stone that felt impossible to dislodge. She knew this man? Her history etched deep into the creases of her brow, revealing shadows of painful memories I felt unprepared to handle. "Listen, we can talk about this," Rachel urged, her fierce demeanor softening, though her resolve remained intact. "But it has to be away from him, away from this place. No. Jessica's rejection pierced the air, reverberating against the trembling walls. "I can't just walk away," and then, desperation ignited her voice, rods of fire in a storm. "You don't know what he's capable of if I don't face this now. I need to confront him." My heart plummeted, confusion battling with fear coiling within me. What truths lay beneath the surface of their past? What kind of horror gripped her resolve so tightly? A brief, unsettling silence enveloped us as Jessica's words hung in the air, each syllable crackling with raw emotion, with an undeniable weight that begged for resolution. I opened my mouth to plead with her again, to remind her that her safety was paramount, but the stranger shot a glance towards the door, eyes narrowing. "This isn't over, Jess. I'll find you," and he turned, striding abruptly toward the exit, the sound of his boots echoing through the cafe like a haunting mantra. I wondered if he was truly gone or merely biding his time, weaving back into the shadows, waiting to strike. The moment he left, an unsettling silence fell over our table. Jessica wrapped her arms around herself, her fragile exterior cracking further under the strain of unwelcome emotions. "I didn't want him to come back, but I knew he would," she said, a tremor threading through her voice. "Who is he?" I demanded, my heart racing as I faced her fully. "What did he mean when he said he could find you?" But Jessica, in the depths of her despair, lowered her chin, tears pooling in her eyes as they glistened with unvoiced terror. "I thought I could leave it behind, but he always finds a way." I reached for her, our fingers interlacing as I silently vowed to stand by her side. Just as I opened my mouth to express my reassurance, a sudden commotion erupted near the cafe's entrance. A new figure burst inside, breathless and wild-eyed, scanning the room. My breath caught as I realized it was Mia, her wide gaze locking onto mine, and in that split second, I could see the echo of concern merged with confusion. "Dad! They can't find her. They've been looking everywhere." The stakes had escalated at dizzying speed. My heart dropped, reality crashing down with the weight of an impending storm. Secrets once buried were clawing their way to the surface. I had no choice but to confront the reality that shadows loomed beyond what had only just begun to unravel. The complications of Jessica's past were colliding with our present, and chaos was merely the beginning. Had we just lit the match that would ignite this volatile situation? In that moment, I understood the haunting truth: the hardest battles were only just beginning, and their repercussions would resonate far beyond what we were prepared to face. The room pulsed with tension, an electric current of fear lacing through the air. Mia, breathless, appeared like a sudden storm in our fragile world, her wide, terrified eyes piercing through the chaos. The revelation hung heavy in the silence that followed her frantic exclamation, pinning us in place as the enormity of her words sunk in. Looking for who? Rachel interjected sharply, her protective instincts flaring as she turned to gather more information. Megan, Mia gasped, her chest rising and falling rapidly. They said she didn't show up to class, and nobody's seen her since. It's been hours. The implications danced on the edge of panic, and even though I couldn't place who Megan was, the way MIA's voice quivered with urgency sent a ripple of anxiety coursing through me. Who's Megan? Jessica whispered, struggling to coalesce her emotions. I could see the fight in her beginning to fade, the weight of new dread settling in. She's a friend, Mia said, frustration bubbling beneath her breath. She's going through something similar, and I think she's caught up in whatever this is. Her hand trembled as she pointed toward the door. We have to do something. We can't just sit here. I looked at Jessica, the conflict within her swirling as if battling a storm, tugging against both fear and responsibility. Jess, if they're looking for Megan, what if they're connected to him? I gestured discreetly toward the door where the stranger had just exited, and my insides tightened at the thought of danger extending beyond our table. I can't, she murmured, her voice broken, and I reached out, gently squeezing her hand, desperate for an inkling of hope. Rachel stepped forward, her fierce countenance shifting into determination. We need to leave. Now. We'll figure this out together. Whatever is happening, we can't let it consume us. We can't lose anyone else. As MIA's expression morphed from panic to determination, a flicker of admiration sparked in me. These young women were banding together, supporting each other in a way that embodied resiliency, a spirit I desperately wished to nourish, not just for Jessica, but for all of them. Let's not think about running just yet, I urged, feeling the gravity of the situation pull tighter. Mia, what do you know about where Megan could be? Mia inhaled deeply, her eyes flitting toward the cafe entrance as if expecting the worst. She sometimes goes to the old library by the park to study when she feels stressed. It's a place she can escape. But I didn't think she'd go there alone. Jessica's brow furrowed as if trying to reconcile her own ghosts with the reality of this new urgency. If there's even a chance she's in trouble, we have to go, she said, steadying herself as if the resolve held her together. Rachel and Mia nodded, but I could feel Jessica's apprehension alongside a budding flame of courage flickering to life. Okay, I said, rising from the table, my heart racing. Let's go check. Together. We moved in unison toward the door, each of us burdened by the realities of the connections we shared. The specter of Megan loomed in our thoughts, but unease still gripped my chest, knowing we were stepping into a world that felt decidedly unstable. As we spiraled outside into the brisk afternoon air, I caught a familiar stretch of the street, colors bleeding into shades of gray. Shadows flitted past my mind, trailing like specters, an intuitive echo that warned of the approaching storm. Are you sure you're ready for this? I asked Jessica quietly, not wanting anyone else to overhear. She met my gaze, determination flickering behind her wariness. No. But I have to. An unexpected kindness interrupted the tension. A passerby offered Rachel a sympathetic smile, and for a moment, I could almost believe we weren't stepping into peril. We were bound together by the filaments of love and friendship, a tapestry that might just hold up against the sharp edges of our fears. As we arrived at the library, the dimness inside felt heavy, almost suffocating. Moments dragged by in electric silence, anticipation crackling as we reached toward the door, my pulse echoing in my ears. And then, something slid under the door from the other side, a small slip of paper. A note. My heart raced as Jessica picked it up, her fingers trembling, and as she unfolded it, the world momentarily stopped. The scribbled handwriting blared a warning that dealt the final blow: you're too late. She's already with us. The shadow that had followed us now wrapped tight around my heart, a sickening realization dawning on us all that our journey had just begun. The secrets lay in wait, ready to consume us whole, and I felt, just like Jessica, that the past was stronger than we ever knew. The air in the library was thick with an unsettling silence, magnifying the distant sounds of rustling pages and whispered breaths. I could see the libraries of countless memories and possibilities swirling around us, yet none felt tangible in that moment. The note clutched in Jessica's hand seemed to pulsate with a life of its own, mocking the very idea that we could walk out of this unscathed. What does this mean? Rachel's voice broke through the silence, sharp and urgent as she leaned in closer. Who are they? I don't know. Jessica's eyes were wide, filled with an anguish that twisted my heart. The weight of that note pressed heavily against all of us. But we have to find Megan. Mia stepped forward, breathless but resolute. What if we went to the back? There are offices and storage rooms, maybe we can find something that can help us? Her determination caused a flicker of hope in this grim theater of confusion. As we veered toward the back corridor, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being pulled deeper into something darker than we could comprehend. Each step resonated with the ghostly whispers of our fears. What laid ahead was unknown and increasingly perilous. We reached a door marked staff only. I glanced nervously toward Jessica and Mia, who shared similar expressions of trepidation. Rachel slid her hand over the doorknob. There was a moment when everything suspended in time, only to drop back into reality as she turned it and pushed it open. The small room was cluttered with stacks of old books and faded papers. Remnants of forgotten times and lost stories cluttered the shelves, yet it felt like a prison rather than a sanctuary. Dust danced in the faint beams of light breaking in through the tiny window, and I could see the sharp outlines of boxes piled high, almost leaning toward each other with secrets. We spread out, scanning the chaos like moths drawn to a flickering flame. Check for anything about Megan, I urged, my voice barely above a whisper as a sick sense of urgency gnawed at the back of my mind. Mia rummaged through a box marked archives, her expression shifting from hope to dismay with each item she pulled out. How could she just vanish? Her voice trembled, a mix of despair and confusion that sent chills down my spine. Maybe there's a pattern, Rachel suggested, flipping through old attendance logs, her brow furrowing as she scanned the names. Something that connects these disappearances. As we searched, the disarray around us felt suffocating. The revelation of the note, the thought of someone orchestrating Megan's fate, left an acrid taste in my mouth. The world outside felt miles away, an echo of a happiness we'd all taken for granted before the tendrils of dread coiled around us. Just then, Jessica called out, a breakthrough breaking through the oppressive stillness. Look at this! She had found an old newspaper clipping, faded but unmistakable. The headline read, "Disappearance of local students linked to underground syndicate." My heart raced as she pointed at the names listed, a mixture of familiar and unfamiliar faces adorned with tragic fates. This doesn't make sense, I murmured, my fingers brushing against the article. What are these connections? But deep down, I felt a creeping realization that we were caught in an intricate web, one that ran deeper than any of us understood. Mia, eyes wide, pulled away from the table and stared at the door, an instinctive recognition igniting in her gaze. We need to move now. Her urgency propelled us into action. I could feel the dark underbelly of this situation coiling tighter around us, and I fought to keep the panic at bay. Just as my mind teetered on the brink of despair, a beam of light pierced through the heavy atmosphere, a kindness and the hushed murmurs of a librarian passing by, offering a lingering glance that seemed to promise support in our darkest hour. We will find Megan. We have to, Jessica spoke, pulling her shoulders back, her voice steadier now, determination gleaming in her eyes. There has to be something we're missing. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the main library area, causing us to jump. The sound was jarring, reverberating through the shelves and sending dust swirling like panicked souls. What was that? Rachel whispered, fear threading its way through her voice. We exchanged alarmed glances, goosebumps sprouting on my skin. As the horrifying reality sank in, it struck me our potential path forward was veiled in uncertainty, laced with escalating risks. What if we weren't alone? What if they had already found us, and before we could even contemplate our next move, a familiar, anguished voice echoed through the walls. Help! Somebody, please. It was Megan. We froze, raw panic cratering against the hope ignited by Jessica's brave resolve. But now that hope teetered on a precarious edge, and I knew that no matter how much we wanted to save her, the depths of this dark mystery were only beginning to unfurl. With Megan's voice linking us to an even more dangerous game, we had no choice but to plunge deeper into the shadows that awaited us. The tension thickened around us, and for a moment, the world outside faded into insignificance, leaving only the echo of Megan's desperate call reverberating in my skull. Help! Somebody, please! Each word sent a fresh wave of adrenaline coursing through me, igniting every instinct to protect her. We have to find her. I declared, almost instinctively, but the room felt like a trap closing in on us. Mia nodded vigorously, her face pale but resolute, while Rachel's hands trembled at her sides. Jessica's expression shifted from determination to fear, an emotional pendulum swinging dangerously close to despair. Where do we even start? Rachel breathed, her voice wavering as dread took root. We follow the sound, Jessica said, pulling me toward the door as if our very movement could tether Megan's plight to ours. In her eyes, I saw a fierce spark of determination that pulsed like electricity. But beneath that was the same swirling fear that rattled in my bones. We had no idea what awaited us outside this room. Stick together, I urged, the gravity of the moment sharpening my focus. A new fusion of fear and hope danced in the air around us, reminding me of all the times we had faced adversity before, and yet, this felt different. This was no minor obstacle, this was life or death wrapped in silence thick enough to choke on. As we emerged into the main area of the library, the atmosphere buzzed with an unsettling energy. The once familiar layout was now foreign, shadows creeping further into the corners, as if they were part of a living sentience. We moved cautiously but purposefully, straining to hear anything that might lead us to Megan. Stay quiet, Mia whispered, her eyes scanning the labyrinth of bookshelves. The fear of being discovered gnawed at me, but Megan's voice pulled us even deeper into the darkened heart of the library. We followed it, navigating through the tangled paths, each step infused with a mixture of hope and dread, a dance of emotions that left my heart racing. Where is it coming from? Rachel asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The faint echo of Megan's cries bounced off the walls like a haunting melody. It felt impossibly close yet maddeningly far through there. Jessica pointed to a narrow passage between two towering shelves. The dim light barely illuminated the path ahead, casting eerie shadows that seemed to curl around us like menacing fingers. We slipped into the passage, the air thick and oppressive. Each breath felt loaded with possibility and foreboding. As we pressed on, I instinctively reached out for Jessica's hand, a silent reassurance that in this overflowing fear, we weren't alone. Megan's voice grew louder, the desperation evident. Please, I'm here. Help! My heart thudded faster. It was like a lifeline pulling us through the encroaching darkness. As we stepped into an even narrower corridor, a shuffling sound made us pause, our hearts collectively stuttering. A figure loomed in the shadows, tall, cloaked, and utterly menacing, blocking our path. I felt the weight of an unyielding tension coiling through me as my instincts screamed. Megan? I called out, my voice ringing out boldly despite my fear. The figure turned, revealing a glint of something sharp, a blade, maybe. Fear escalated, and without thinking, I shoved Jessica behind me, shielding her from whatever danger lurked. Who are you? The figure asked in a voice low and gravelly. It felt as if the walls themselves were closing in, each word muffling our breaths under its weight. What do you want? Mia stepped forward, her voice shaking but determined. A flicker of courage rose in her demeanor, and hope dared to bloom in my chest. Maybe, just maybe, we could talk our way out of this. No sooner had the thought crossed my mind when a sudden crash shattered the tension. A loud bang echoed from beyond the hidden depths of the library. The ground trembled slightly, and a few dust particles rained down from the ceiling, a reminder of the danger that lay above. In the chaos, the figure faltered, eyes darting to the source of the noise. It was the distraction we needed. Go! I shouted, urging my friends to move while I kept the mysterious figure occupied. The last glimpse I caught of Jessica was a mix of fear and resolve, her fierce spirit unwilling to let go of hope. As my friends sprinted down the corridor, the figure lunged at me, and in that breathless moment, I was struck by the realization this was not just about saving Megan anymore. It was about confronting our worst fears, and yet, among them, a flicker of hope remained, urging us to keep pushing forward. With a sudden burst of energy, I charged back, ready to confront whatever threats lay ahead. No matter how heavy the burden grew, we were inextricably woven together, and I wouldn't let Megan's cries for help echo into silence. But as I faced the cloaked figure, another noise thundered from a side room, a horrifying rattle sounding like chains. What secrets lay beyond that door? And who else was trapped in this web of shadows? Just then, my heart broke at a chilling realization. The chains were not only a warning, they were also a call to a struggle bigger than ourselves. The chains rattled again, a symphony of despair echoing through the oppressive silence, drawing me toward their source with an irresistible force. My instincts screamed at me to run, to flee before the darkness swallowed me whole, but the cries of my friends being swallowed by the shadows held me hostage. I had to push forward, not only for Megan but for myself, for us all. Stop! I shouted, my voice reverberating off the library walls, resonating with more courage than I felt. The cloaked figure hesitated, its focus diverted, and I took the opportunity to slip past, my body ignited with adrenaline. As I neared the door from which the chains rattled, my heart sank. Each step was heavy with dread and trepidation. What awaited me on the other side? The fear clotted my throat, but I had to know. The door creaked ominously as I nudged it open, revealing a room dimly lit by flickering lights overhead. In one corner stood a substantial metal contraption, its chains coiling like serpents poised to strike. The sight twisted something deep within me, an all too familiar sense of dread wrapped in recognition. A small figure squatted on the ground, bound by the very chains that rattled in my ears. Megan. I rushed forward, heart racing, only to be halted by the mire of confusion spinning around my mind. The girl bound before me was not just Megan, her face mirrored stories of struggle and survival, weariness etched in every feature, draining every drop of hope from her eyes. Megan? I asked again, desperation lacing my voice. The reality of her situation clouded my heart, the doubt creeping in. What if this wasn't my friend? What if it was only a cruel trick of my own twisted perceptions? The girl lifted her chin, tears spilling down her cheeks, streaking through the dirt and grime. You shouldn't be here, she whispered hoarsely. You need to leave before they come back. Who? Who did this to you? The question tasted bitter on my tongue, as if the very inquiry could summon the nightmares lurking in the dark. I didn't want to know. Before she could respond, the metallic door behind me creaked ominously as it swung silently shut. A chilling gasp escaped me. Was I really too late? A soft thud caught my attention, and I spun around just as the figure emerged from the shadows, an otherworldly malevolence emanating from it. You're too late, boy, it hissed, its voice weaving an unsettling melody through the air, wrapping around my senses. She's mine now. Confusion rapidly twisted into despair as anxiety pinched at my chest. A rush of protective instincts surged once more. There was no way I could allow this figure to take her from us. Megan! I turned back to the girl on the floor. In getting you out of here, a flicker of a smile crossed her lips, the faintest glimmer of hope in the midst of a storm. You don't understand. It's not just me. You need to help others. My heart sank again as she pointed towards a darkened area behind the machine. A realization crashed down on me like a relentless wave. I wasn't the only one swept into this scenario. I could hear muffled whimpers beyond the oppressive darkness, and suddenly, I felt nauseous, fear bubbling in my stomach as I confronted the magnitude of this challenge. Others? My voice quaked with uncertainty, my heart pounding in a frenzied rhythm. How many? 5 of us, and time is running out, she said, urgency lacing her words with a desperate edge. You have to act quickly, or none of us will survive. Before I could respond, the figure lunged forward. I barely sidestepped its grasp, adrenaline surging through my veins. As it barreled into the distant shadows, I realized it was no longer just a fight for Megan. It had evolved into a mission for all the lost souls entwined in this agony. The chains rattled again, a reminder of the struggle we faced, pushing me to dig deeper into whatever reserves of courage I had left. I will find them, I vowed, determination pushing through the layers of fear. I won't let you take anyone else. With each step I took toward the next shadowy corner, I began to understand that I was not merely searching for Megan but also for the fragments of hope threaded throughout this dark, haunting labyrinth. As the chains whispered secrets, I could feel the weight of my choices collapsing around me, and I was about to learn that sometimes, confronting our greatest fears necessitates not just courage but also sacrifice. A deafening crash echoed once more throughout the library as the lights flickered and buzzed. The figure that had occupied the passageway earlier was back, its sinister form casting an elongated shadow against the flickering light. You should never have come here, boy, it hissed, and it became painfully clear this dark entity was prepared to do whatever it took to maintain control. In that moment, my resolve surged. If all of us were to survive, I would need to unleash every ounce of bravery buried deep within. But as I prepared to face this menace, I was suddenly borne back into my thoughts, the weight of my realizations colliding in an avalanche of uncertainty. Just beyond this fight a thunderous crescendo rang out. A hidden door somewhere behind the machine burst open, and my heart threatened to stop as shocked faces appeared at the opening. I recognized one of them. Jessica was there, panic wide in her eyes. What did you do? She cried out, but before I could answer, the figure wheeled to face her, leaving me frozen, teetering on the brink of uncertain salvation and impending doom. What would happen next? Would I be able to save them all, or would they become part of the twisted narrative of this relentless darkness? My heart raced, the devastating truth whispering in my ears: time was cruelly slipping away. The room spun, a whirlwind of chaos pressing in from all sides. Jessica stood in the threshold, her face a canvas painted with dread and disbelief. And yet, amid the storm of shadows, a flicker of confusion crossed her features, as if the pieces of a puzzle she hadn't realized she was trying to solve were transitioning into focus. "Megan?" She breathed, horror etching deeper lines onto her forehead, her gaze darting to the girl bound before me. "What are you doing here? You know this isn't safe." I swallowed hard, the implications of her words crashing down around me. How deeply entangled was this dark tapestry, stretching between us and whispering secrets about our fates? "Megan needs help," I said, my voice straining under the weight of urgency. "There are others trapped here." Before I could finish, the malevolent figure lunged again, its form a dark blur rushing towards Jessica. I threw myself between them, adrenaline surging through me as I braced for impact. The collision sent shockwaves through the air, and I felt the hard floor against my back as the creature stumbled, disoriented. "Get back!" I yelled, but even as I spoke, the dread wrapped around me tighter, trying to crush my spirit. The chains rattled ominously, a predatory hiss of impatience urging the creature to strike again. "Megan, how do we free you?" I asked, heart racing. Her eyes sparkled with determination that contrasted sharply against the shadows closing in around us. "The keys," she breathed, a glimmer of hope igniting in her expression. "They're with the figure." "You have to take them, right?" I shouted, my voice rising above the chaos. I had to take action, had to drive the fear from my heart and into the void where it belonged. As the figure regained its focus, I felt a surge of clarity. "Jessica, keep Megan safe," I commanded. Ill-distracted, find the keys." Without waiting for a response, I sprang to my feet. With a deep breath to calm my racing heart, I charged towards the figure once more. I felt like a moth drawn to a flame. While I knew I could become trapped, I had to embrace that risk to spark the hope that flickered within all of us. Just as I reached the sinister apparition, I pivoted sharply, dodging its grasp and plunging into the depths of the shadows. The moment hung pregnant with tension, an electric charge building as I felt the creature's presence press in around me, its malevolence palpable. "Coward!" it snarled, its voice reverberating off the walls like thunder. "You cannot save them. They belong to the dark." I pressed on, desperation clawing at my heart as I searched behind the machine where Megan had pointed. My fingers brushed against something cold and metallic. Keys. Heart pounding relentlessly, I seized them, the weight of hope flashing as I swung back towards Megan, but the figure had anticipated my move, diverting its attention from Jessica and lunging toward me, its outstretched hand filled with malevolence and darkness. The realization struck like an electric shock. My heart plummeted. If I couldn't reach them soon. "No!" Jessica shrieked as I barely sidestepped the strike, and an icy tendril grazed my shoulder. Pain arced through me, an anchor pulling me down, but I forced myself to stay focused. Every second counted, every moment was veiled in uncertainty, a countdown echoing deep in my core. "Megan, hold on," I called back as I lunged forward again, determined to reach her. "I've got the keys." As I dove to protect my friends, I caught a glimpse of the shadows slithering around them, taunting and teasing like sentient creatures, hungry to feast on fear. I could feel the weight of their despair. "Megan, you need to unlock the chains," I shouted, tossing the keys to her. "You can do it." But just as her trembling fingers grasped them, time warped around us, a cruel twist of fate as the figure surged forward in a flash of darkness. I acted, pressing my body against the machine to shield her, feeling its jagged edges scrape against me. The pain ignited, but I pushed it aside. I couldn't give in. Not now. A chorus of screams echoed in my mind, each one a reminder of what was at stake here. "Megan, hurry!" I pleaded, fear and desperation mingling thickly in the air. Then, through the cacophony, Jessica's voice broke through, shouting something I couldn't comprehend. A shred of panic flickered in my chest as I turned, desperate to decipher her words. "Megan, look out!" she screamed, and in that heart-stopping moment, I felt an unbearable weight as everything around us shifted. The shadows closed in, their laughter a chilling symphony laced with malice. I felt the air thrum with raw energy as the fabric of reality warped, darkness stretching like fingers towards us, time slowed. My heart pounded in rhythm with the crashing chaos, realization dawning upon me. The figure wasn't just defending, it was building something, an attack woven through fear, something so insidious I couldn't fully grasp it. An overwhelming dread washed over me as I finally put together the pieces. The chains weren't just there to bind, they held us hostage to our greatest fears. With a terrified glance back at Megan, I realized the stakes were even higher than I had imagined. As my heart raced, the urgent burning of hope flickered fleetingly in my chest, urging me not to give in. If we were to survive, I would need to fight against the very darkness that sought to consume us, and just as the first chain shattered with a bone-rattling clang, a blinding light erupted from behind the figure, revealing another hidden doorway, the path beyond dim but glinting with an otherworldly promise. Follow! I yelled, caught between exhilaration and terror, as shadows quivered, momentarily distracted by the unexpected burst of brilliance. Feeling Megan's eyes on me, a heaviness settled in my gut, a bittersweet pang of dread and hope mingling together. I had to draw from every ounce of courage to face the darkness that was closing in as I heard the first sinister laugh of the creature echo softly, curling around us like smoke. No time slipped away like sand through our fingers, and as the light flickered, I realized, in that very instant, we were not just fighting for our lives, we were about to uncover a truth that would change everything. Jessica, Megan, now! I shouted, my heart hammering as we prepared to step into the unknown once again, hoping desperately that this was not the last stand we would ever make. The door hung ajar, beckoning us into its luminous embrace, but the darkness surged with a terrifying ferocity. As I lunged towards the blinding light, my heart was a wild drum in my chest, fear battling against an ember of hope. Jessica and Megan were just behind me, their anticipation palpable as we stepped over the threshold, but the moment we crossed the line, the shadows writhed angrily, tightening their grip around our ankles like creeping vines. The room transformed behind us into a cacophony of a maelstrom of emotion, darkness, and uncertainty. A haunting wail emanated from the shadows, their sinister whispers growing louder, more insistent. They won't let you go. The figure's chilling voice echoed through the passage. You belong to me. Each word was a dagger, forcing me to pause and acknowledge the depths of our entrapment. I turned, catching a last glimpse of the figure, its malevolence radiating, its hollow eyes burned into my memory. Uncertain if we had truly escaped, I sprinted forward, the light illuminating our path, propelling us deeper into the unknown. No matter what, we need to keep moving, I urged, glancing back as we dashed ahead, the shadows beginning to consume the flickering glow. Our thumping footsteps echoed unnervingly in the hall, and my mind raced with the implications of that sinister promise. Were we truly beyond their reach, or had we merely entered a different layer of their prison? As we pressed on, the light began to dim, casting long, jagged shadows that danced along the walls. Megan. I heard Jessica's voice, tight with concern. You're still hurt. Are you okay? I'm fine. Just keep going. Megan replied, her determination undeterred despite the uncertainty clinging to us like a second skin. I wasn't talking about your body, Jessica shot back, concern morphing into frustration. You're not fine, none of us are. Something flickered in Megan's eyes, a storm brewing there, anger mixing with fear, but before she could respond, a deafening crash reverberated through the air, sending more shadows spiraling toward us. The darkness snaked through the doorway we had just crossed, a wave of despair threatening to engulf us entirely. Run! I yelled, urgency surging anew. We dashed forward, breathless, as the shadows writhed in pursuit, a living embodiment of our fears. As we fled, fragments of memories unsurfaced, whispers of my past mingling with the present. Conversations with Jessica about her desire to connect, her struggle to carve a place for herself in a world that felt anxious and unfriendly, the inherent vulnerability of being young and lost. I couldn't help but think these shadows were born of those same feelings, drawing strength from our doubts and insecurities. How much farther? Megan gasped, a hint of panic creeping into her voice. I don't know. I shouted back, fighting through a fog of despair. But we have twice stopped abruptly, my heart sinking as I felt a presence ahead blocking our path. The radiant light we had chased flickered in the distance, darkness pooling like a lake before us. A figure stood there, its outline almost ethereal, shimmering like mirage. Was it friend or foe? Megan, wait! Jessica called in warning, her eyes fixed ahead, but our hope turned to horror as the figure stepped into the light. My breath caught as recognition surged through me. An echo of my past entwined with this nightmare. The woman before us was someone I once knew, someone who had been lost to the shadows long ago. "Are you here to guide us?" I spoke cautiously, but even my words felt hollow, entangled with dread. Her face was a bittersweet tableau of innocence and sorrow, fleeting glimpses of a life once vibrant, now dimmed. "You can't run from the darkness, it knows you," she said in a voice that felt like a chilling caress. "Every fear you harbor, it whispers to me." Megan's breath caught in her throat, eyes wide with shock as she recognized the girl from her own past, a former friend, someone they both loved, now feeding the darker echoes of our reality. "No, you're wrong," Megan cried, stepping forward defiantly. "We will not be bound by fear," but her words lingered, hanging heavy in the air as the shadows eagerly rippled, their laughter filling every crevice, controlling, consuming. In that agonizing moment, the walls around us started to close in, and the light dimmed further, swallowed by the encroaching darkness. "Fight it. We have to fight it," I shouted, a desperate plea against the encroaching terror. But deep down, I hesitated, questioning whether we held the strength to defy the darkness when it knew us so intimately. Suddenly, an unexpected warmth enveloped me, a soft whisper dancing through the tendrils of despair. It was Jessica, her hand clasping mine, lending her strength to me as we forged ahead, spirit entwined. Beneath the layers of panic, I felt a glimmer of shared courage. "Keep going. We won't lose each other," she urged, voice steady, and I clung to her resolve, believing it could shatter the shadows looming behind. But just as we moved toward the looming threshold of light, a shadow released a piercing howl in anguish that resonated with deeply buried memories. Time seemed to slow, and all of us froze in horror, as a new malice took form, a truth unfurling before us. "Do you truly believe you can escape what you are?" The figure intoned with a haunting echo, its voice entwined with our deepest fears. And as a piercing laughter rang out, resonating with intimate knowledge of our souls, a terrible realization washed over me. In our desperate attempt to outrun the darkness, we were unearthing secrets we weren't ready to face, insecurities entwining us in a way I had never anticipated. "No!" Megan shouted, a primal scream erupting from her depths. "We will face it together." But before we could react, the ground beneath us trembled, quaking as the threshold began to crack, the very foundation of hope splintering ominously. An unknown terror lurked beyond, waiting to teach us just how deeply our fears would wound us in the confrontation ahead. As the darkness enveloped us, casting shadows on new layers of grief, I realized we had inadvertently awakened something far more insidious than we could have ever known. Suddenly, dread flashed through me, a premonition that the path forward would reveal not only our struggles but something much more profound awaiting in the shadows, an unimaginable truth that would join our destinies forever. And as the fracture grew wider, I felt a profound fear bloom in my chest. What if the light we so desperately sought led us towards something we had never imagined? The shadows pulsed around us, a tangible darkness that seeped into my bones, chilling the courage I had tried so desperately to cling to. I blinked against the darkness, desperately searching for a way out, while the clamoring fears of guilt, betrayal, and grief began to unfurl within me. Here, at this precipice, I could feel my heart racing in time with the shadow's ominous whispers, each beat echoing doubt. "What if we are trapped here forever?" "Megan," I called hoarsely, "get ready." I knew we had to make a break for the light, but doubt surged through me as the fractured ground quaked under our weight. "On the count of 3, we charge forward, all right?" Her eyes narrowed, determination threading through the fear-laden depths of her gaze. "We can do this," she affirmed, and in that moment, my shared resolve strained against the chaos around us. "Everyone ready?" I asked, taking a quick breath to steel myself, as I felt Jessica's grip tighten on my arm. I caught a flicker of her wide-eyed fear, mixed with fierce bravery, a juxtaposition that gave me the strength to face what lay ahead. 1, 2, 3. We surged forward. The ground trembled beneath us, but we pressed on, finding unity in our shared intention. The light beckoned like a distant sun fighting through storm clouds, a lifeline against the oppressive darkness that sought to ensnare us. But as we moved, the figure launched itself toward us, the chilling laughter echoing with a familiarity that sent renewed chills coursing through my veins. "Do you really think you can outrun your own shadows?" it taunted, its voice a sinister melody echoing through the turmoil. I glanced back, and the moment felt eternal. The shadows writhed, and as they foamed, the figure's form sharpened, revealing the haunted visage of faces I had long buried in the depths of regret and heartache. Familiar faces long forgotten but now haunting my present flashed like flickers of a broken memory. The pain surged anew, a visceral reminder of why I had fought so hard to forget. Suddenly, Megan's voice broke through the fog of my thoughts. Don't listen. They can't hurt you if you don't let them. With sheer resolve, we pushed even harder. Together! Jessica yelled, our collective mantra fueling the light ahead. We thrashed against the encroaching shadows, but I felt my energy dwindling with every step. The darkness clouded my consciousness, aiming to pull me back into its depths. Then, suddenly, we broke free. We burst through the threshold into a sunlit glade, the warmth enveloping us. Here, the shadows melted away, evaporating like morning mist under the rising sun. The palpable weight of despair lifted as sustaining light cascaded over us in golden hues, illuminating the bruises of our pasts. We made it. Mia gasped, her voice trembling as disbelief danced across her features, but then I turned, facing the other side of the glade. Megan, Jessica, and I shed tears of relief, yet something tugged at my heart, a flicker of something unmistakable, bright as the sunlight that embraced us. A flicker of hope, but as I looked back toward the threshold, the figure emerged slowly, shifting from murky to familiar. My legs faltered, my heart clutching at the sight. The woman who had confronted us before now stood among the light, her eyes large and gleaming with sadness. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said softly, an echo of regret swirling in her voice. I was once lost in my own darkness. I just couldn't reach the light. I felt the heaviness of her despair, and the gradients of pain melded into a bittersweet understanding. You're not alone anymore, I whispered, grappling with the reality that she too had fought against her demons. The journey we each faced connected us more than I ever imagined, and you don't have to face it alone. Not now, Jessica said, stepping forward as if bridging the chasm between past anguish and present hope. There's always a way back into the light. A moment of silence followed, filled with unspoken empathy as the shadows retreated behind the woman, their hold over the space finally relinquished. Perhaps, together, we can seek redemption, she replied, tears glistening in her eyes as they blended into the light pouring around us. In that moment, I felt the weight of every battle I had fought and every piece of unresolved pain begin to shift within me. It became clear, the battles we each faced alone could be shared, and through understanding, perhaps we could begin to heal. I turned to Jessica and Mia, their faces filled with a burgeoning spirit, and I realized our journey had led us here to a place of forgiveness and acceptance. We had emerged from our shadows, not just to save the others but to reclaim pieces of ourselves long thought lost. Let's go back, I said, a newfound strength infusing my words. We can help others find their way back too together. Their faces lit up with renewed hope as we stepped hand in hand towards the threshold, the light guiding our way. It bubbled in my chest, a fragile yet unyielding spirit of forgiveness and love blossoming within us. As we stepped back into the dimness, now transformed, I felt a rush of awareness. The journey we took, the battles we dared to confront and embrace, were merely a chapter of our evolving story. And I knew, in my heart, as we walked forward, fraught with uncertainties and scars, that we would emerge victorious on the other side, carrying each other's shadows but letting the light in. And from behind us, a familiar voice echoed softly on the winds of hope, no one is truly lost forever. In that moment, I understood the beautiful truth of our shared existence. It was okay to be vulnerable, imperfect, and yet still strive for the light. I clasped Jessica's hand tighter, a promise in my heart echoing louder than any shadow ever could. We were not defined by our darkness, but by the light that we dared to seek, and no matter what lay ahead, we would face it arm in arm, together.